All right. Well, hello, everybody. Drasko here from 10knorm.com, where my main focus is to help guide heart-centered entrepreneurs that are consistently under that 10K per month mark to transcend the blind spots that are keeping them from thinking, feeling, acting, and authentically marketing so they can normalize their own versions of 10K months. And for today's episode, we have a real talk segment where I bring in a heart-centered entrepreneur who's on their way to their own 10K norm. And we have some real talk. And that real talk is about, what's currently their biggest challenge in this moment right now towards their own 10K norm. And in that conversation, we explore who they are, why they do what they do, and then live on the call, I get to help them explore and get out of their own way on the challenge that they're currently experiencing in their own 10K norm. And for today, it is my privilege to bring to you Claudia. And you can correct me if I'm pronouncing this incorrectly, but it's Goetzelmann. Is that correct?
That's pretty good, yeah.
All right. Okay. I'll take pretty good. That's fair. And as I was going through Claudia's submission and like looking through who she is, I think if I can summarize in like the shortest amount of time, like who she is and what would be the one word that stood out for me, it was eclectic. Because
Mm.
there's so many cool things that I think just from the outside looking in that you do. I mean, from being a traveler who's lived on 4 different continents, like you grow your own food, you're a yogi, you do guided meditations, and then on top of that, you are a midlife coach, an empowerment coach, an end of life doula, which I've actually never heard of before. So I'm excited to dive into that. A trauma therapist to be. And actually, you said that you were training with Gabor Mate, who
Mhm.
I've listened to quite a bit on like London Real and a Tim Ferriss podcast. So that's really cool. I'm excited to dive into that. And if that wasn't enough, you are still an advertising photographer. And I looked at your pictures and I was like, wow, these are really cool, even in my amateur, unknowing anything about photography experience. But I really enjoy just kind of scrolling through that and seeing the cool stuff that you do. So, Claudia, thank you very much for being here. And
Wow.
welcome to the Real Talk segment of the show.
Well, thank you for having me. That was quite an intro.
Well, I think
And
you do quite a lot, so that's
I
why.
guess so. It's interesting. It sort of accumulates more and more. I don't know. I'm a very curious being. So I have this urge of learning. I guess that's part of why there's more and more in my resume.
Absolutely. Yeah, I feel like it's grown quite a lot, and I feel like it will continue to grow as you grow. So what I'd like to kind of start off with, because there's so many different aspects that we can go into. I mentioned that like a midlife doula, or so end of life doula is something that I've never heard of before. So if you want to start off there, you certainly
Mhm.
can. Or if there's anything that you want to give context to, and then we can move from there. I hold the space up to you.
I think that's a good point to start. We'll start right in the middle. And of so I became an end of life doula, which is there's birthing doulas and there's end of life doulas. So basically, I work with people at the end of their life. Um, 5 years ago, I basically felt I was dying, not literally, but emotionally, internally. My whole life fell apart. And I got really intrigued with death. And since I'm a very curious person, I just had to learn more about this and then how synchronicities went forward. I did the studies and became an end of life leader.
That's amazing. So it was always and this is such a common thread to so many people that I speak with and that I follow, which is out of like our biggest pains and seeming disasters is usually where we birth our biggest gifts. Like oftentimes our
Right.
mess becomes our message. So
Hmm.
um what was it about that period that birthed you into going down this path of being an end of life doula?
Well, so I felt that something in me was dying. And so midlife coach, I think when we're in the middle of our life, we call it now, it's this word, this kind of sloppy word, midlife crisis, right? But I feel it is actually a transition. And we only fall in the so-called crisis because we don't have the tools or the language to understand that our life once again is changing. And, when you go back into our ancestors, there was always initiations and ritual. And people would just, or, when you were little, you would become an adolescent. There was an initiation into your adulthood. And so as we would go on in life, there was always another stage where maybe somebody would hold you and share some wisdom, and you would shed some old parts of you. But in our modern world, we're just so lost. And then, especially in the Western world, so we fall into the midlife crisis and we don't have any tools. And I feel that, I know it's a lengthy answer. I don't even
No,
know if I'm
absolutely.
totally
I'm all
even
about lengthy
answering.
answers, so go right ahead.
Answering, but um, so, and throughout these rituals, initiations, then and now, there's always a death and there's a rebirth. And so I felt that I really wanted to get in touch with that part in me again. And then became very passionate about voicing it and sharing it forward, because the more knowledge we have in letting go of what's no longer needed and accepting that death, and then putting it down gracefully, then we make space for the new, and we can rebirth and welcome this new, whatever new wants to arise in us, right? So that's sort of the brings it together in the coaching world, what I do.
Absolutely. So, what stood out for me, which is something that I've always identified with and I've worked with people through, and I've certainly experienced in myself quite a bit. It's like so often we speak about like up leveling or
Mm-hmm.
transcending or like ascending or however it is we speak about that like rise in consciousness or inner
Mm-hmm.
up leveling. One part that always stood out for me, even in like stoicism or in other ways that people have explained it, and I'm definitely looking forward to seeing what your thoughts are on this, but it's like your old self resists that. Like the reason it's so hard is because your old self freaks out. It's almost like it's a death of the old self to bring in and allow the higher self in to be rebirthed as something new. So is that something that you've experienced in your work and in your own process to
In
reflect
my own, yeah, in my own process, I think the magic happened when I gave up resistance, when I surrendered. And surrender in the best word, in the best sense of the word, not in the like I'm against the wall and putting my hands up, but really in a way of like there's acceptance. And maybe, okay, today is going to be a shitty day and I'm in this mud hole with myself, but also I get to marinate in it. And there's nutrition in that mud, right? I mean, it's all metaphorical, but it's really, it is actually that truth. You sit in your own pain and your own, yeah, like it's just this acceptance, and then suddenly it comes and it bursts itself. And so, yes.
and that's amazing because I think it's we started this call talking about, well, it is from the pain that usually you have this birthing of something new
Mm,
and better. And I'm sure you go into this in your coaching as well, but the distinction between like pain and suffering, right? And you mentioned the
mm,
resistance. So
mhm.
in both my personal experience and working with clients, like it's often our resistance to whatever it is that's behind the pain or is causing the pain that actually causes us the prolonged suffering.
Right.
um so in your experience, so with regards to like surrender, because that's something that's certainly been so true in my experience too, is part of that surrender also accepting and allowing just the resistance to be, and then it suddenly passes. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the pressure goes away in that very moment when you allow whatever wants to arise. And even, this is such an interesting topic, because there's, spiritual bypassing. It's like, oh, we're all, just chill out. It's all good. It's fine. I'm not angry. No, I think we need to embrace whatever there is, like, and it's a grieving process. And we grieve. We're supposed to go through the motions of everything, of the tsunami, of the disappointment, the fear, the shame, the anger, all of it, the loss, like, and then we come out on the other end, and it's basically this birth canal, right? Again, once again, we get to birth, and we are in that darkness, and then we come out and we come into that love, because we're birthing something new, which is, yeah, up leveling. I like that word that you actually use, that the new version of ourselves.
So what is it that resonates with you when you hear up leveling?
In which context?
So in general, because you were saying, okay, I like this word and this is something that kind of hits home. So what is it about up leveling that hits home for
I
you?
think it's just this upgrade of the system. It's about maybe entering a new flow state. It's about deeper trust. It's about also peeling back another layer. So maybe let's say, okay, we can go right to Gabor's work, to compassionate inquiry, what he says, or we're born like this beautiful innocent soul, like this is the authentic self, right? Who we are mostly. I mean, there's already some things can happen before we're born, and that's ancestral baggage, but in general, let's just say, for the sake of it, we're very pure, and then life happens, our childhood happens, and more and more and more and more things we're holding on, and one tragic happening is triggering another one and another one. We carry so many things, but when we allow to see ourselves and to let go and accept, then we can also pull and peel back another layer, and we're letting go of the package, and we get to get closer to who we truly are meant to be in this lifetime. And to me
Absolutely.
that is, and to me that is really to show up and be loved.
Yeah, to get to that true essence that's oftentimes just kind of hidden behind all of the stuff, like all of essentially the bullshit, right? That
Mm-hmm.
gets in the way. And it's secondary, I think, what caused it to be there, but all of that piling that just keeps our light from shining. I think that flows into our life in so many different ways, even outside of business, because I think if you can't shine your light, you then are muffled to the people that actually need you the most. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
that always, and kind of the reason why I started 10K Norm was so often it's not necessarily the marketing tactic or the strategy that doesn't work. It's that if we are fundamentally still afraid to be who we are authentically and to say it out loudly, like to just do things, tell people as authentically and loudly as possible, no real marketing tactic is going to work, right? Or if we are okay with that, we oftentimes then add another layer to it and we deny who, like, because somebody, an expert or a guru said we have to market this way, we deny our own authenticity. And then it just, there's a mismatch between how we express ourselves and what's authentically wanting to come out. So has that been your experience as you gravitated this world?
Oh my God, I love everything you said. It's so beautiful. It's exactly so true. So, when was this? In November last year, I suddenly sort of, maybe through the whole last year, let's say, because of COVID, things you internally shifted. The photography fell away because it was not deemed essential anymore. And so I really got much more into my coaching. And so I always had this idea throughout the year, and I was like, I'm finding my voice. I'm finding my groove. And then in November, I started podcasting, and I really found my voice. And then I did the sound meditation stuff. I found another level of my voice, and I'm still ongoingly finding my voice. But if somebody would have said to me, now it is what, June? a year ago in June, or maybe, yeah, a year ago in June, I was like, oh, you're going to be all on this podcast and you're going to speak publicly about all this. I'm like, no, me, no, never. And so it's so freeing to step into that space of me, who I'm asked to, as I'm up leveling to this new person, with this message I feel like I carry and I want to share with the world. And oh my God, trust me, it's definitely it's my edge, and I have to, I'm stepping into my vulnerable space. And social media, it's very interesting because there's this conditioning, right? There's this pressure. It's not like somebody says that to me, but it's the internal voices who I'm then hearing, oh, you should be doing like this. Oh, if you do that, maybe you lose some people who will not like you. And, it's just fascinating. We're like, no, I just truly, truly, truly have to be me. And if I'm passionately being me, then everything else will come.
Absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
the great thing, and if somebody's listening to this, or rather is watching this on YouTube on the video recording, I think what stands out for me is like, your tonality, how you just kind of like, I know your coaching is called like blossoming, right? Like you have that, like I think you just blossom when you were like, yes, like I can finally just authentically speak about who I am, what I do, who I do it for. And I think that's
Mm-hmm.
so important for heart-centered entrepreneurs who, by virtue of being sensitive and by virtue of being very attuned to things, there's
Mm-hmm.
always this like, I think it's not obviously true for everybody, but there's always this element of like people pleasing, or like how do we are perceived in the world, how do we make sure we navigate it so everybody's okay.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like you've made quite a lot of shifts in that transition for yourself. So what I'm curious about is, how did you go about actually making that happen
Me personally,
for you personally? Yeah.
when? Like
So
few
there's
years
in this
ago?
last year, because you mentioned in this last year, I made this shift to like, I'm just going to speak my own voice. I'll get on podcasts. I'll talk about what I do.
Yeah, no, it just came from the inside out.
Okay.
There wasn't even any overthinking. It was really truly out of my gut feeling. And I also really trust my process. I trust the universe, whatever comes my way. I'm a very open-minded being. And if it's meant for me, it will be, right? It will come it's like it's a vibration. So I started this, and it's not like I made a plan. It's not like I was like, oh my God, I need to be on this and this and this podcast. It's just so matchmaker. Maybe yeah, we actually connected via matchmaker, didn't
Correct.
we?
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
did, yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, amazing. So I did this profile one day. I was like, I'm gonna do this. What do I have to lose? Nothing, right? I'm just gonna put myself out there, and that's sort of how it came. And it's an amazing platform, and whoever feels like one that, or we need to speak the same language, and then somehow we connect. The right people will find each other, and it's been an amazing journey. I've met so many great people I've become friends with, and it actually helped me tremendously through the lockdown. I had all these deep, windy conversations. I felt like I learned so much. Yeah, I'm so grateful.
Absolutely. And I love that, because that's kind of been my experience with the platform as well. And
Mm.
ironically, it was actually my girlfriend that said, you need to like do this podcast. Like it's when people hear you speak, like it's a different thing. And I resisted it for a long time, right? I was like, I don't know, like I don't really like listen to a lot of podcasts. I prefer video, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason I bring that up is one of the things that, I was kind of hearing potentially even between the lines as you were talking, is like the gut feeling I had was stronger than the thoughts I had around, why I shouldn't do it or should look this way, etc. And that kind of overpowered you into getting into action. Right. And
Mm-hmm.
you also in between there mentioned like, I should be doing it this way. It should look like this way. If I say this, who will it offend? Will it not offend? Will, like all of these kind of thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's extremely important, because so often than not, we reject ourselves before any real objection happens.
Yeah.
And when the real objection happens, it's actually never really that bad. Like hearing an actual no
Mhm.
in some ways, and it's not always, it's a blanket statement, but in many ways, it's really not as bad as how much we were rejecting ourselves
Yeah.
before that no even materialized. And oftentimes we even get a maybe like more often than no's, right? And it's in the
Mhm.
maybe that we create our own suffering of like, but I didn't do it right. Am I worthy enough? Like, is this going to be good?
Mhm.
Like, what? I'm clearly not good enough. Like, it just, we create our own rejection there. And the fact that for you, you surrendered and got out of your own way, I think is really cool, because it's, you overcame those thoughts without ever having to consciously like work on them. So
Yeah, and you know there's multiple layers to this. So you know it started with one version of like me stepping into this and talking about certain things. But then over maybe beginning of this year, I really started talking about death and how I'm very passionate about this. How you know we really need to show up in a different way towards the topic of death. And it's definitely, there's a big stigma around death. People don't want to talk about it. And also, I started posting more on social media, on Instagram about death, like blurbs and what and how I feel. And in the beginning, I was definitely like, no, I can't post this. People will not like this. You know, it's about death. Oh my God. And I was like, no, 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 no. This is my passion. This is really my message because we are disconnected and death isn't optional. And when we are connecting to that this death will arrive, then we can really live a much more fulfilled life now. And that's, you know, the key element of my coaching. So it's very fascinating how I had to overcome yet again another hurdle in my head. No, it
mm,
wasn't externally. It was nobody said, but Claudia, hey, you shouldn't be talking about this. No, it was my my ego mind was telling me that, you know, nobody else.
right. It wasn't like, it was my thought saying you
Yeah.
shouldn't talk about death, and I attached to those and said, yeah, you're right, I
Yeah.
shouldn't talk about death. But it's like, hold on, there's nobody like I'm the only one saying I shouldn't be talking about this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. So
And when I did it, you know, at the end, now I've talked about it so much. It's been actually so freeing. And people are like, wow, this is an interesting take you have on this, or it's a refreshing take, or I'm so glad you addressed this and you helped me. I'm trying to shift my life. I mean, there have been so many beautiful responses and feedback from people, via, you know, via the podcast or via social media. It's been like, wow. So it's, I think people are really needing these tools and the reminders. It's just that, again, I had to, you know, I'm talking about the stigma and I was still myself stuck in the stigma.
mm, right, it
Ah,
wasn't other people's stigma, it was my own stigma or my
mm,
own stuff that was actually, it's like prejudging, right? Like you're prejudging something that hasn't actually occurred.
yeah, it's these old constructs. And, you know, and there are so many layers of them. Because you let go and you let go and you're like, I got this. I this time, no, I got it. I'm free from this old story. And then another thing comes and then it goes deeper and deeper. And you're like, whoa, where does that suddenly come from? I, but,
Absolutely. Yeah. It's always
yeah,
like one thing attaches to the other. And then
yeah.
eventually, well, actually, I mean, I would like your take on this as well. So, one of the things that I talk about in like my coaching is, we have this sentiment of like waking up. So, like bringing awareness to something that's wrong. So, like you talked about, I realized I had the internal stigma before there was actually an external stigma. So
Mhm.
I woke up to that. I gained awareness. And I believe once you gain awareness of something, you can't really be unaware. But
Mhm.
now it's like, even if I am aware, sometimes it doesn't actually change people's behaviors. Like I'm aware that I have a pattern of, you know, like attaching to my inner critic, but sometimes people don't, like they're only aware and they never actually grow up from that. So the second part of like from waking up is growing up. And to me, it sounded like you kind of did that in one fell swoop. I realized I had this stigma, and then I just, transcended or did something with it, whether it was conscious or unconscious. So my question to you is, did you have a process that you went through to go from that waking up to growing up, or it just ended up kind of happening in that moment?
I think it's a continuous journey, but I was thinking when you earlier talked about it, that people may not be able to change their behavior, even so they become aware of it. It's because it doesn't feel safe. So they rather stay, whatever the situation is, whatever the relationship is. You can attach anything to this, in that old framework, in that old relationship, because that's what we know, and it feels safer, even so it's harmful to stay there because it's comfortable, right? So I think because I'm so curious, um, and I know sort of my edge, I need just to go there, and I need to see how it feels, because what do I have to lose? I can always come back to the thing I already know. If I don't do it, then I'm like, for me personally, then I would think, I should have, why did I not do this? It's just sort of how I'm wired. And that's why I lived in many places in the world. That's all. Different things, because I have this sense of adventure, maybe. I don't know.
Absolutely. So that sentiment of, because I've grown over the years so familiar and okay with the uncertainty that comes with travel, and like, what's
Mhm.
next? I'll just flow my way through it. I'll figure it out. It seems to me like I've practiced that so often, that combined with the curiosity, that actually just allows me to process that waking up to growing up a lot
Mhm.
faster. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I mean, in a humble way, yes. I think it's just how I'm wired.
Even in an unhumble way, like you can just enjoy it and and own it. It's totally okay. So yeah,
Yeah,
I
you
think, well,
actually, and the other thing also, I think maybe last year I also embraced a whole nother level of floating and trusting. And that is such an essential part of how we, I think, need to live, because life, we always think we're in control of something, but we're not. And then came COVID and everything shut down, right? So it really like showed us we're not in control of anything. Our planning went out the window, boom. But what we can be certain of is our internal landscape, our internal knowing, our internal holding, our internal grounding. And so, and there is this, again, the gut feeling. And if we get in touch with that, and we understand what our inner voices tell us or not, and what, how we befriend our demons and dragons, I don't know, there's a trusting state, and there's this floating, and like, I'm going just to be open. I see what comes my way. If it's meant for me, it will be for me. If it doesn't, great. I had an experience, but maybe it wasn't. And it's not that I am just sitting back and waiting for something to happen. I'm actively involved in this process, right? I'm doing. But I think if you really truly get to know yourself, you also know that feels right. Not the energy doesn't. I have to put so much energy to make this work, and or doors open suddenly in front of you and be like, whoa, now I can actually walk through this. So it's, maybe the voices that's interesting. Is that I feel like I am truly supposed to I share this message forward. It feels right,
I mean,
you know.
it definitely is coming out to me. I think that the passion for sharing that message is 100% um, alive in when I speak to you now. So I agree with you 100%
Mhm.
on that one. And given that, you have so much awareness and experience, as far as, this is like, I'm so self-aware that I can navigate my way through a lot of things. When you bring that into, your challenges now with regards to like growing this business, and establishing your own 10K norm, what comes out for you as far as like, this is what I'm finding most in my path right now?
As a hurdle, you mean?
Yeah, as a hurdle
Mhm.
towards your own version of, your 10K norm, or your growth of your business.
Um, right now, I feel like it's to stay focused. So I have a lot of ideas of what I want to share, and I think I'm a better speaker than a writer. I feel like I need to talk more because it's also my passion, right? It's my energy I'm bringing forward. So then I get sidetracked because now I'm also a student. I study, and then I'm still also a photographer. So there's a lot of like, I feel like I'm pulled in a lot of different directions. And I think for me, the challenge is to really stay on my, like with the energy. So my energy doesn't get too um,
It's like
woven
diluted.
into, yeah, into too many different things. So I
Got
think
it.
that's, mhm.
So, I mean, unsurprisingly, very self-aware, right? Like I realize what my patterns are, but I'm not exactly 100% sure how to deal with them. That's kind of what's coming out for me.
Mhm.
So kudos to you for that. And it's a very common thing that I find with, I mean, it's entrepreneurs in general, people in general. And that's why, like, even in the 10K norm program, like we spent the first half of it like normalizing, and that includes managing our thoughts and feelings, learning how to self-coach ourselves. And then the last module, which is relevant for this discussion, is actually about focus management. How do I
Mhm.
focus consistently enough on the things that I know I'm capable of doing, know I should be doing, know that I want to do? And when that veers off course, how do I manage myself through it?
Mhm.
So when it comes to your actual focus, is it more that you are just selecting different things because they're kind of like that shiny object syndrome? It's just exciting to do a lot of things, or I don't actually know which thing to do, so that I just kind of like try a lot of different things and see where it'll land, or something totally different entirely. How does that reflection kind of land with you?
No, so I bring my experience from the photography also over. So I know as a photographer, I never ran for trends. I mean, there's photography, like especially in the fashion world, there's like this style is fashionable now, and then next 3 seasons later, a different photography style. I'm like, no, you have to really truly, you have to develop your own voice, your own vision, and then you will stand out. So I'm bringing this right into Permission to Bloom, and let's say into my Instagram platform. And but I think I am on the right path, but I feel like my message could be bolder and stronger. And I'm not sure. Maybe it's these like little blurbs on Instagram Live. Let's say I just do like 10 minutes, 7 minutes, and intermix them with some meditations. And I think that would be really powerful. And then I would build a stronger, loyal community. But I haven't done it yet. it's, it's coming. I feel it. Actually, again, it's another burst. I'm bursting again. There's another bursting process inside of me. And it's so fascinating when sometimes I'm like, oh, am I losing this interest or what's going on? And the next day I'm like, ooh, it's there. I feel it. Oh my God, this is what I need to do. So it's a fascinating process, knowing about it.
Absolutely. And I think,
Mhm.
given somebody with your experience, you also like somatically experience a lot of these things, right? Like you understand it, you feel it, you
Mhm.
flow with it, you kind of tune into it. So I can definitely see why there would be so many different like layers, so many different flavors to your question and to your process. So because I'm kind of taking notes as you are sharing this. So out of like being or staying focused, like not being sidetracked, this sentiment of like I need to speak more, this sentiment of I need a bolder message, I need a stronger message. Out of those three things, what do you think is the part that is the obstacle for you right now at this moment?
Yeah, we break the ice.
sorry, to
I just have to break the ice. I have to do it. I think it's you know, I talk about this as so often on my in my Instagram page. It's like this one step. It's just one step. It's again, it's that edge, it's that vulnerability. It's like, okay, just gonna do it. And you know, and I do Instagram lives, but it's done with another person. It's much more planned. But instead of just being like, this feels right, I'm out and about in nature, and now I feel this is coming through me, something, and I'm just gonna share it forward. And I think I just need to break that ice and do it one time, and then I
okay, and in this context, do it like you would define it as like an Instagram live or making an impulsive or
Mhm,
spontaneous post like that. That would be
mhm. Not the post, but like speaking.
it.
And
Okay.
yeah, speaking for between 5 and 10 minutes, being really concisive and focused on my thought process, what I feel like I share forward. You know, I want to have content, good content. I want to be really, the message should be clear. So I think it's a muscle I'm probably strengthening, and I just feel like it's coming, and I just have to do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so there's a few different layers that stood out for me there as well. So one is,
Mm.
okay, so I have to just break the ice and do it. I have to go live, right? Then there's a sentiment of, well, I just need to speak more. So I have to speak more. I have to make the content good and the message should be clear.
Well,
So
they all morph together. They all somehow morphed into this one thing, into that step, into the, like the little bird needs to be pushed out of the nest.
got it. And yes, I agree with you. They do all kind of morph and circle around this one
Right.
core thing. So
Yeah.
if you had to state that core thing into one sentence, like one concrete thought, what do you think that thought would be?
And I don't know, you lost me. In which, like, what do you mean one concrete thought?
So you were saying like all these sentiments of I got to go
Mm-hmm.
live, my message should be bolder, it should be stronger, I need to put out good content, my message should be clear, I got to just break the ice and do it. If you had to summarize that issue, if you had to summarize that sentiment, that resistance, how would you
Mm,
summarize it into one sentence?
the resistance. Um, well, taking down the elevator is probably some fear of not being incisive or good enough. You know, it's just, that's again, it's like I'm saying this, I'm being my own therapist this
Sure.
podcast, you know. So that's probably an underlying sort of belief system. We all have that, right? When we do things or we don't do things. So that's probably one thing. An old, an old voice, an old belief system is coming back in and being like, no, you shouldn't be doing this, Claudia. You know, it doesn't feel good. It's not gonna go well. People are gonna laugh at you. And then there's this whole, then I'm like, wait, this is an old story. I don't need to hold on to this. I'm just gonna do it. So I know you said one sentence and I gave you 20.
It's usually how these things work, so that's fine. I'm okay with that. So I shouldn't be doing this, people will laugh. So I shouldn't be doing this. Let's get a little bit more clear on that one word, this. What is this? I shouldn't be doing, if you had to elaborate on this, what would it be?
This is the going live and being live in front of an audience. That's, you know, I think it takes courage to do that. You know, it's so fascinating because I know I use this word a lot, fascinating. Um, because we are on social media, we can hide behind this wall, right? We can take on an identity or whoever we want to be, as long as we just post words or photos. And then there's this life, and the life is very real. It's just you speak, you are you. You really have to show up to yourself and the world and whatever message you carry forward. So and that I think that's, you know, that's the courage, that's the edge, that's the vulnerable space. It's like walking out on that ice.
guys, is like the courage, the vulnerability is,
Hmm.
not to show the polished, Instagram ready thing, but
No.
to show the real full spectrum. Like that's not
Yeah.
necessarily one or the other, but the full spectrum. Is that
Yeah.
accurate?
Yeah, I mean, and that's exactly my message also to, my coaching world. Like, let's be real, let's be, be authentic. And then, so I live my own message basically. And I think we are conditioned. We live in a world where the judgment comes very, very fast.
Mm-hmm.
So you do 100 amazing things, you do one wrong thing, and that's what sticks with people, right? It's the news. It's like we drive on negative, or nobody wants to report about good things. Like on the very end of the newspaper or the news station, right? It's like also that happened today.
Absolutely, yeah. And that's where it'll naturally gravitate towards. Because I mean,
Right,
again,
yeah.
we all know that fear sells. So
Yeah.
are you okay if we dive a little bit deeper into like
Hmm.
those statements and kind of go into, okay.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. I love it. This is great.
perfect. I'm glad that you are such a good sport about it, because I think this is, like you said, the real talk that really helps you, because it's cool to just, be here. And like we said, we have those Instagram ready, like polished
Hmm.
things that we say, and that has its time and place. I'm by all means not anti any of that. But I
No.
think it's these things that really drive the point home. So thank you for being that
Hmm.
beacon for everybody that is going to listen to this episode. So the one that kind of I keep coming back to, like when I listen to you, is this whole idea like I shouldn't be going live, with an audience. Like I shouldn't be doing this. So if you look at that thought, because to me it kind of summarizes everything that we talked about, right? Like whether I'm distracted, well, it's easy to be distracted if I shouldn't be doing this, because I need to find what I should be doing, right? Need a better message, because if I have a better message, then I should be doing it because I know the message is right, right? If I am bold, right? If that condition is true, then I should be doing it, right? But as long
Hmm.
as I keep thinking I shouldn't be doing this, then as you've seen, there's like 10 million different branching thoughts that will justify I shouldn't be doing this,
Hmm.
right? And this is how a lot of heart-centered entrepreneurs get into these things where they'll chase the next marketing tactic, they'll chase the next webinar, they'll chase the next strategy. And again, that has its time and place, but is only ever as good as your ability to manage yourself through, and I call this thought management and 10K norm program, through
Hmm.
these thoughts. Like, how do I self-coach my way through this?
Hmm.
So with this thought of I shouldn't be doing this, like who would you be without that particular thought?
Hiring Katie.
Exactly. That's exactly it.
Oh my
And yes,
goodness.
I
No,
do
it's
use
good.
her work quite a bit in what I do.
Who would I be? Yeah, no, I would be that person, and I would be doing it. And it's interesting that you use that, turning it around. It's really where is it centered? It's this belief system, which I just need to let go of. You know, yeah. Who would I be? I would be free of this fear, and I would be not caring, and I would be passionate, and I would be doing it, and I will be. That's the thing. I will be doing it. Yeah.
Love
Right
it.
after this call.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, if you want to do like a follow-up accountability bit, if I went and I did this after this one, I'm totally fine with that too. So since you are familiar then with Byron Katie, are you
Mhm.
okay if I walk you through the rest of the questions?
No, let's do it. It's
Okay.
great. Yeah.
So you were saying, okay, so who I would be without this thought of I shouldn't be doing this, I would be free. I would be passionate. I would not be caring, like essentially, what consequence, I don't know the specifics of your thought, but like I wouldn't care so much to like not do this. Um, so then if that's like the case of like this is who I would be without that thought, like is there a reason to actually keep the thought of I shouldn't be doing this?
No, no. I think you can take it even further down. Like it's because we are who we are, right? And everything is interconnected. And it takes us even back to our self-worth, how we grew up in our family of origin and our childhood. I mean, there's so many things which play in when we have to show up in a new way, when we go to this edge, and when we walk out and suddenly something would get triggered. Because, and as I said earlier, we all do that. We subconsciously play small. We stay small. We don't step up and out and become this shiny diamond. We are basically are, because of exactly that, this belief system. And then you ask, yeah, who would I be?
That's it. And you would be, right? Like everything we actually start at
Yeah,
the beginning, right? Like if
right.
you
Yeah.
remove the bullshit, you remove the
Yeah.
attachment, the suffering to the thought of I shouldn't be doing this, whatever
Mhm.
the root of it was, because I think sometimes it's the branches of that
Yeah.
thought that get in the way. You're left with the free, full essence of I would just be living without fear. It would be easy to execute whatever
Mhm.
the marketing bit, right? So then just to complete that loop, since you are familiar with inquiry, right? If you were to turn around the thought of I shouldn't be doing this, what might you turn it around to? What feels true when you turn it around?
I should be doing this. I simply should be doing this. I simply will be doing this. And I simply need to step into this space I am called to step into. Yeah.
I mean, that certainly feels truer for me. How does
Mhm.
it feel for you?
Oh, it feels, I know that. I know, I know that.
Awesome.
I truly know that it's this, and I think it's this birthing I'm going through right now myself. And it's this voice also, which, it's like, I guess it's there's this like this. There's the voice, the old story, don't do this. And then as it turns around, and it's this journey, there's an internal journey, right? And then yeah, suddenly this other voice gets louder. I'm like, yeah, why have I not done this? Why did it take me so long?
Yep, that's usually how it works. And one other thing I would offer to you in the turnaround, because I do agree with you, like, not I shouldn't, I should be doing this. This is everything that I said I wanted to do. This is actually it. But it's my attachment to that story, to that narrative that actually keeps me from doing it. So
Mm.
what I would offer to you in an additional turnaround is, and I do this oftentimes on my own and when I coach clients through it, is if we replace I with my thinking, what would the turnaround be?
I was my thinking. My thinking. So I should be doing it. My thinking should be. I don't. I not completely
So
following.
your original statement was, I shouldn't be doing this.
I shouldn't be doing this. But then, what do you mean by thinking?
So if
I
you
shouldn't be
replace
thinking that.
I with my thinking, what would the statement be?
My thinking shouldn't be existing.
Well, my
No.
thinking shouldn't be doing this.
My thinking shouldn't be doing this.
Correct.
Hmm. My thinking, but my thinking. This is my inner critic. So it's hard to. Well, I can only talk from my point of view, my process, right? So it's it's not something I can switch on and off. I have to come to this. It comes from the inside out, and yeah, I have to come back to the birth. I have to give birth to this conviction, maybe to the courage, and it maybe tomorrow morning I wake up and I'm like, that's it.
So would you like some additional reflection on that
Yeah,
piece? Okay.
sure.
And the reason, this is really fascinating, I'm so happy that it kind of went in this direction, because the easiest person to lie to is ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And I don't mean that in a judgmental way, but the reason that I point that out is, so you had a shift when you said, okay, so I turn it around and it shouldn't be like, I should be doing this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So that statement, while inherently truer and, much more closer to the action you want to take, is also very future focused. Like, I
Ooh.
should be doing this is true in this moment, it'll be true tomorrow and in a year from now, right? And it can
Mm.
stay true the whole time. When I ask you to say, okay, turn around the I to my thinking, your energy right away went down and your brain went into, like, the first thing you said, well, this is my inner critic. And then you just went on this whole
Oh,
tangent,
tension.
etc., right?
And I went into my brain to cognitively analyze it instead of staying with my
Protection, right?
body. Yep.
Correct, right? Because if,
Wow,
as a
thanks.
smart
Nice.
individual, I keep like thinking of all these reasons, then you went into, well, if I wake up tomorrow and I give birth to this, like, all future focus that has nothing to do with right now. And it's
Oh
all
my God,
protecting you
yeah.
from what? The one thing that is the real truth here, which is, it is
I
my
am doing this.
that shouldn't be doing the live. My
Mm-hmm.
thinking and my narrative and my attachment to the story is actually the thing that's keeping me from doing it. Now it's
Mm-hmm.
fighting for it to not die and allow for the birth of what you said, right? I am free of fear, I'm passionate, etc. The bit behind, right? So it's interesting how, like, in the moment where you have the opportunity to realize it, that's when that resistance always strikes, because it doesn't
Mm.
want to die, right? It doesn't want that death to occur. And I think you yourself, as far as I can see from your face, like, you're realizing that, and obviously the listeners, etc. But how interesting
Yeah.
that is occurring.
No, that's an amazing catch. Hey, that's great that you caught on to that. And it's so true. It's, yeah, I think I'm even a little bit like blushing now. I was like, wow, he caught me.
Yeah, yeah, it's always good when you do it to somebody else, but not never on the receiving end, right?
Well, it's always, of course, more easier if you are not involved. If you do it to somebody else, you just see the person from far away. You're not emotionally in it, so it's harder when you're in the middle of it. But yes, you totally caught me. So you're amazing.
No worries. So again, thank you for being, and housing this container, because that is, at the end of the day, what I believe the conversations around these topics need to be had. Examples like this need to be shared. And yeah, okay, it is the core of what I do in 10K Norm. Um, but this especially, and then you proved it today. It's like, we went through a process, you felt better, yes, thank you, I'm now more voted, I'm going to do this, but you were still that one step removed from
Mm,
actually being closer to then doing it after this call
mm,
tomorrow, whatever, because you were still
right.
rooted in a better feeling, I'll do it next time. So it was that one extra step that
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes makes the difference between, I'm doing the work to the level of which allows me to connect it back to my results. And that's why I always
Mm-hmm.
say, with regards to focus, because we started this whole conversation with focus, you
Mm-hmm.
know, focus is the evidence of active decisions, right? Am
Yeah.
I in the moment making the decisions to either self-coach myself through whatever, BS is coming up?
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't need to do that, then am I taking the active decisions to do the things that are going to produce results in reality, that I can
Mm-hmm.
then say, like, okay, this is working, this is not working. Everything
Right.
in between that is drama,
Yeah.
right? And that really is the sentiment of, like, connecting the work that hearts and entrepreneurs do with the actual marketing piece. So thank you for,
Yeah. No, I wanted to also say, and it's a waste of energy and space inside of us instead of, again, I mean, this is, we all do this again on whatever level. We waste so much energy on the churning and turning and analyzing instead of really not. It comes full circle. As I said, even with the voice, it was just happening, right?
yeah,
A year ago or November, and like you asked me, oh, was there a process? And I'm like, no, it was my gut feeling. And now, in this moment, when we just did this, I could have also been like, hey, no, it's a gut feeling. I'm just really going for it. But there was much more of an, cognitive overthinking going on and the old story resisting. I'm like, ooh.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's again, right. The waking up, you see it now. So kudos
Yeah.
to you for being present and open-minded to do that. So yeah, in terms of, I think in your instance, moving forward, I think you know what your message is more than you initially said you did. And I think that was part of this whole narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a matter of, okay, now when I catch myself in these loops, can I turn that around
Mm-hmm.
and then just be who I am without them, which is the free of fear, not caring, passionate, and really true to, like, I think it's clear to everybody that your messaging and why you're doing the things you do about death and the rebirth and all of that, like clearly that is something that you're behind. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's what is on top of that needs the clearing. So yeah,
Right.
from my perspective, thank you very much for being present for that process.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed it. It's great because I'm hardly on the receiving end, on the other end.
Yeah.
So it feels a little bit vulnerable to do this recording and being live, but then again, right? It's let's just be real, though. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you, because yes, you are correct. It is not everybody's cup of tea. So I appreciate you doing that. And I guess before we close it off, any other follow-up questions, comments, or concerns about that whole piece that we just went through?
No, I think I will digest it and maybe journal about it because it's I like this turning around and really looking at it and analyzing. I mean, analyzing, yes, or understanding maybe beyond the cognitive. Maybe it needs to also I need to understand it or arrive to that answer through my body, and that's not an excuse. It's just my process. Um, and so I think I will do that.
Absolutely.
Like
Yeah.
it,
And I
yeah,
think
good
that
reminder.
embodiment piece is so important that,
Mm,
many well-meaning individuals will, like, I'll go meditate, I'll go journal. And oftentimes I think that falls into the category of either relief or spiritual bypassing.
mm-hmm,
So your propensity to go towards the pain and to actually, like, embody whatever it is authentically present is
mm-hmm.
going to be a key component of actually making the transition and the transcendence of it. So definitely I agree with you on that one. So in that case, to just close it off, how can people find more about you or what you do? What is the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Well, as we discussed, all the Instagram lives now on.
Yeah, that's right. Now they won't be able to get rid of you because you'll get
Yeah,
Instagram
exactly. We're like, oh my God, it's Claudia again.
Live. Good problem to have. That's fair. Awesome.
um, so, well, Instagram, yes, permission underscore to underscore bloom, permission underscore to underscore bloom, and then my website, permission to bloom coaching. That's how you find me.
Awesome. So yes, definitely. I think in this instance, we're always the hardest ones to take our advice. This was your permission to bloom as well on Instagram Live. So thank you very much for being on the show, being vulnerable, and being such a great example of how to go through this work on our own. So that's
Thank
that
you.
for today's show.
Thank